We live in this world with just incredible educational technology, right? We've got virtual reality, AI tutors, you name it. But there's this one challenge, this one huge hurdle that just won't go away. How in the world do we keep learners motivated? It's the big question for everyone from teachers to corporate trainers.
So let's just get right into it. Why is it such a struggle sometimes? We've all been there, haven't we? I mean, maybe you're a teacher and you're just trying to get your class excited, or you're a student and you're just trying to, well, stay awake. At the end of the day, it almost always comes down to motivation.
And look at these questions. These aren't just made up. They actually come straight from the research of Professor John M. Keller. He's the person who really decided to tackle this head on. And these quotes, wow, they just perfectly capture that feeling, that frustration from both sides of the classroom. The teacher wants to inspire, the student wants to be inspired, but there's just something missing.
So what's the solution? How do we fix this? Well, Professor Keller didn't just think about the problem. He built a real practical solution. And it's not about being some kind of super charismatic, magnetic personality. Nope. It's about design.
He called it the ARCS model. And you should think of it less like some dense academic theory and more like a recipe, or maybe a toolkit for building instruction that is designed to be motivating. It takes this big, fuzzy idea of motivation and breaks it down into 4 simple, actionable ingredients.
First up, A is for attention. This is your hook. This is how you grab a learner's curiosity right from the get-go, and, just as important, how you keep them engaged. And we're not talking about cheap tricks or entertainment here. We're talking about sparking a real intellectual curiosity, an itch they just have to scratch. Like a science class that starts with a totally baffling experiment, or a history lesson that opens with a mysterious, unsolved letter from the past.
Next, R stands for relevance. This is the big one. This tackles that age-old student question. When am I ever going to use this? It's all about connecting what they're learning to their own life, their own goals. For a math class, it might be showing how trigonometry is literally used to build the video games they love. For a writing class, maybe you use their favorite movie to break down story structure. It's about directly answering that "what's in it for me" question. Then we've got C for confidence. Look, if a learner thinks a task is impossible, they're just going to check out. Game over. So the key here is to build them up. Give them clear goals, give them meaningful feedback, and create challenges that feel tough but, achievable. This can be as simple as starting with a few easy wins before getting to the harder stuff, or breaking a huge project into small, bite-sized pieces. It's all about helping that learner believe, yeah, I can do this. And finally, S is for satisfaction. Learning needs to feel good. It should feel rewarding. Now, that can be something external, like getting a badge or some positive praise. But the most powerful satisfaction is intrinsic. It's that aha moment, that feeling a student gets when they wrestle with a tough problem and finally solve it themselves. The goal is to make them feel great about what they've accomplished, so they actually want to come back for more.
Okay, so that's the recipe, ARCS. But here's the real question. Does the cake actually taste any good? Does this model really work out there in the real world? Well, to find out, we're going to look at a huge systematic review from 2023. Researchers analyzed 55 recent studies all about the ARCS model. So first off, where is this research even happening? The answer is pretty much everywhere. It's a global thing. But what's really fascinating here is the massive amount of research coming out of Asia, almost half of all the studies. This tells you right away that ARCs isn't just some Western idea. These principles of motivation clearly resonate all over the world.
And what about the education level? Well, you can see it studied most often in higher education, colleges and universities. But it's also being used and tested all the time in secondary and even primary schools. That really speaks to how flexible this model is. It works for different age groups in totally different learning environments.
And this is the kicker. A whopping 77% of these studies were using the ARCS model in settings with a lot of technology. We're talking game-based learning, augmented reality, mobile apps, you name it. This proves that ARCS isn't some dusty old theory. It is actively being used right now to design the future of learning. Okay, so we know it's popular, we know it's being used everywhere, especially with tech, but that brings us to the most important question of all, right? What did these 55 studies actually find? Does it actually work? What's the impact on students? Well, the results are overwhelmingly positive. I mean, look at the left column. Study after study found that when you apply ARCs, you see better student motivation. And even more important, you see better grades, better academic achievement. Now, to be fair, it's not a magic bullet. A handful of studies you can see on the right didn't find a huge difference, and that just reminds us that context is everything. It depends on the students, the subject, and how well you actually implement the strategies.
But the final verdict from the researchers who looked at all 55 studies, it's pretty clear and pretty powerful. They said that, consistently, when you design instruction using the ARCS model, students' attention, relevance, confidence, and satisfaction all go up. The bottom line, the model works. It delivers on its promise. And you can trust these results. A lot of these studies used a special survey to measure motivation, and its reliability score, it's a stat called Cronbach's alpha, was often above 0.9. Now, for those of us who aren't statisticians, a 0.9 is basically an A+. It means the tool they were using to measure motivation was incredibly accurate and reliable, so these findings are built on some really solid ground. So let's wrap this all up. What's the big takeaway for you? It's that the ARCS model isn't just some abstract idea. It's a proven, actionable toolkit that you can actually use. And Keller even gives you a simple 4-step process to follow. Step 1, figure out what the problem is. Are your learners bored? Are they anxious? Step 2, design specific strategies to fix that problem. Step 3, build those strategies right into your lesson. And step 4, see if it worked. It's a constant cycle of designing, testing, and improving. And that brings us to one last thing to think about. We've seen how ARCS is perfect for today's tech-filled classrooms. But as AI gets better and better at personalizing what we learn and how we learn it, will it also master motivation? Or is there something uniquely human about a teacher's ability to inspire genuine attention, relevance, confidence, and satisfaction? What part of motivation will always be our secret ingredient? Definitely something to chew on.